Hey, and welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast, just for builders, remodelers, and general contractors. Look, if you serve commercial or residential customers and you're interested in the business of the contracting business, and if you're at a place where you're excited because you're already at 1 or 2 million a year in sales, but you also feel like you could be doing more, then you, my friend, are ready. Because this show is all about getting to the next level by working smarter, not just harder. Now, today's guest is going to be Andrew Crapuchettes, and it's an interesting episode because we're going to talk about how SubTrades can stand out to serious builders. As you might have guessed, Andrew is a serious builder. Here's why today's episode is important. Because number one, having great relationships with a repeat client, like a serious builder, is an important way to grow the long-term value of your contracting company. Number two, understanding how builders like Andrew think will help you understand how to bid your next job and still come out ahead. Three, I want you to hear what Andrew thinks is important and measure yourself and your company against what you know you need to improve. And number four, and how often do any of us get a time and a chance to do this? I want you to get inside the mind of a large developer. The more you understand your perfect customer, like Andrew, the better you will be able to serve them. Now, there are simple systems to help you run this business, make the money you deserve, and live the life you ultimately want. Those simple systems give you the quiet confidence to take this company wherever you want to get it to. If I had to summarize everything for you, this podcast is about the mindset of growth and success for you as a business owner. Did I just say mindset? Well, if I said mindset, I got a couple of dad jokes for you. Why dad jokes? Why bad jokes? And why dad jokes poorly delivered with poor timing? Because I want to get you laughing and I want to get your mind open to hear what our guest Andrew has to say. So here's a couple of dad jokes you can share. Now, Andrew and I already spoke. I recorded him earlier and now I'm doing the intro. Andrew was talking about the problems he has with contractors who are hunters. And so I thought, how come I've never done a set of jokes on hunting since I love hunting and fishing? So here's a couple of hunting jokes for you. What's cheaper, beer nuts or deer nuts? Wow, you guys know the answer. Deer nuts, because they're under $1. Oh, that one's coming out of camp. Hey, why did the deer get braces? He had buck teeth. Oh, you can tell that one to the kids tonight at the dinner table, at home. Groans. Two skunks see a deer hunter sneaking through the woods on an early Saturday morning. They say to each other, I hope he's not going to shoot at us. The second skunk bows his head and says, let us spray. Okay, come on. I want you to tell that while you're in a tree stand and your buddy's trying to stay quiet. He's going to snort, which is going to sound like a whitetail wheeze anyways, but he's going to snark. He's going to like that. Funny. All right. On the first day of deer hunting season, a hunter falls out of a deer stand and breaks both of his legs. He's in front of the doctor. He says, why couldn't this happen on my last day of hunting? And the doctor says, it did. We'll think about that one. Here's one that I know, listen, it's not just me. I know some of you have this, you've had this conversation before, so I think you'll get this joke. On the way home from a hunt, where a hunter didn't get any deer meat, he stops by the grocery store. He says to the man behind the meat counter, give me a few of your cheapest kind of steaks. The guy behind the meat counter says, well, we're out of steaks, but we've got hot dogs and chicken. Hot dogs and chicken, says the hunter. How can I tell my wife I bagged that? How many times have you thought about going to the store to get a trout to tell your wife you actually caught something fishing? I would never do that because my wife now knows that every time I go fishing does not automatically mean we're eating fish or deer or moose or elk or bear. Coming up quick here. Here's one for those of us, faith-based contractors. A deer hunter asks his pastor if it's a sin to hunt on Sunday. The pastor says, listen, from what I hear about your aim, my son, it's a sin for you to hunt at any time. All right, here's one. Now this one, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but this one you could definitely tell at deer camp or on the drive up to deer camp, that early morning, everybody's getting together, they're awake. Somebody's trying to convince you that whiskey and coffee actually go together and you should try that today, all that kind of deer camp stuff. But here's a good joke for you on this one. A deer hunter brags about the biggest, most handsome, heaviest deer that he'd bagged the day before. It's got enough meat to eat the whole year. He's bragging. Well, just then the game warden comes up and writes the guy a ticket for hunting without the proper tag. The guy looks at the ticket and he says, $500, all for a mangy, skinny, stubby half-pint deer? All right. Only those of you that hunt would appreciate those jokes. And even then, you might not have appreciated the way I delivered them, but I still did it. Just like you get up every day, got to do what you got to do to run this business. Listen, I host this podcast because one day I want to be your business coach. There, I said it, it's on the table. Now, I have a team of business coaches that I personally hand selected. So it's not just me, it's me and I have high expectations, by the way, for everybody on the team. And I'm proud of every single one of them. Now, with that being said, let me go into business coach mode right now. I've got two very simple actions for you. Number one is I'm going to challenge you. Andrew's going to challenge you because in this episode, you're going to hear something. You're going to learn something. You're going to realize something. You're going to recognize something you're already doing, but maybe stop doing. But whatever it is, I want you to take action in the next 24 hours on something you learned today. And then I want you to pay attention on how that improves your business or your life. Now, the second thing I want you to do is think on this idea. Are you happy being a contractor who feels stuck at 1 or 2 million a year? Or are you ready to learn the steps that'll get you to the next level? By the end of today's episode, you, my friend, will know the answer. So let's get to it. Mr. Andrew Crapuchettes, how are you?
I'm doing really great, and nice to be talking to you.
Yeah, nice to be talking to you as well. We had our intro call, was it a week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to having you on here because you're going to answer a big, hairy question for the world.
How's that? I hope I am. I'm going to at least try. I'll do my best.
Yeah. Listen, if you don't, this never goes to air. How's that?
That's right. Okay, perfect. Yeah, fair, expectations right? Are
low. Low expectations. We should knock them out of the park. No, just so that everybody listening understands why I have you here is because you're a serious builder. And so today we're going to talk about how subtrades can stand out to serious builders like yourself.
Yeah.
Good place to start.
I think that's a perfect place to start. And I think I've hopefully got a lot of input for people who are looking to get jobs with people like me.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question, and it's going to sound a little bit abrupt. Mr. Andrew Crapuchettes, who the heck are you? And how is it that you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing contractors all over the world?
Yeah. So who are you and what are you doing here anyway?
Yeah. Why? What's
like seriously?
I know.
Okay. So yeah, I'll give the short version, the flyover version. I grew up in California. I did the .com thing down there. So honestly, I'm really a tech CEO. I've been blessed to start and sell a number of businesses, everything from a 3D printing business that I sold to a big engineering firm. I started a student information software business. So I'm really a tech guy. And then this is really going to beg the question, what are you doing on this show?
Right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, but I moved up to Idaho 24 years ago. And one of the big passions I've always had is for jobs for people. And I thought I need to start businesses so that people can have good, high-paying jobs, that they can have prosperous lives. That really was the driver for a lot of what I did. In fact, one of my businesses I started, the goal, the stated goal of the business was 50 jobs earning over 50,000 a year in our little town of Moscow, Idaho. So it's 50 at 50. And the reason we did that is because we realized that a good job, whether it's in construction or technology or anywhere, allows you to, take care of your family, be part of your community, et cetera. And so it really is a defining feature of your life. And so I've always had this passion about that. Well, as I grew these businesses, I realized that their housing was increasingly a problem here in Moscow, Idaho, right? And
no different than anywhere else.
No different than anywhere else.
It's the dream we all have to take care of our family, have a solid home, safe place for the kids, good neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, so I want to solve that because anytime you think, well, this would be a problem for me, I bet it's probably a problem for someone else. And you look around, and I'm talking to the University of Idaho president who's in town. And, we've got the University of Idaho here. The president says, I can't hire professors because they can't afford to live here, right? $100,000 salary doesn't cover it anymore. And I tried to hire a developer out of Seattle to come to Moscow, and he's like, "Well, you
personally did,
I personally did,
yeah." Okay.
And he said, "You're gonna have to pay me more because I can't afford to live in Moscow, Idaho." The labor market didn't justify the housing prices, and so I'm a bit of an economist, well, not in training, but I play one on TV. So I thought, like, okay, supply and demand, that's how you fix this problem. I need to create more supply of housing. I'll call it market-driven affordable housing not subsidized affordable housing, market driven, and that's all supply and demand. And
Mm,
so I need to bring housing to the market at scale. And if you do things at scale, generally you can have an impact on pricing,
that's
right?
right. Yeah. You
And so
can
like,
control
okay,
more
great.
things.
And I've been, given resources and abilities. I know I'll go do a housing development. How hard can that be? And the answer is really hard, way harder than I thought
Well,
it would
I
be.
think a bunch of people are right now pounding on their steering wheels like, you just said it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I was in this moment. I'm like, oh, I could just do a housing development. I'll start with 300 acres and the largest development that Moscow's ever seen. I mean, I've
Now,
never done this before. How hard
how
can it
hard can
be?
it be?
Yeah, and it's just
That
about
might be the
broken me.
savant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just about
Well,
broken me, just to be clear. So all you
sorry.
out there, I have a deep and abiding sympathy and respect for the work that you do because it is not trivial. It is not just let's move some dirt around and throw some concrete on it. It is a significant undertaking, including negotiating with the city, working with the county, Department
Mm,
of Environmental Quality, DEQ,
yeah.
understanding the ins and outs and how do you negotiate things. And just the amount of things I didn't know was completely overwhelming, right? When someone comes to me and says, "Hey, we have to build this retaining wall because I'm doing some road development to get to the city's requiring some road development. They're like, you got to do
Sure.
this retaining wall." I'm like, okay, well, that retaining wall is going to cost $300,000, and I had not planned on that in the budget. So what's a plan B? And everyone's like, "There's not a plan B." I'm like, "Well, there has to be a plan B because I have to solve this problem." And that's where I could bring in some of my, I'll say, tech business
Your
solving.
logical,
Yeah, just like,
systematic,
okay,
formulaic,
let's systematically break this down. How do we solve this
right?
problem? And so, like, okay, so how has this been done elsewhere? And of course, you all out there are thinking, well, of course, Andrew, there's lots of ways to solve that problem, but I didn't know those ways. And I think all of us are going
That's
to
what I was going to
find,
ask you.
right?
Sorry,
Yeah,
had you even renovated your own home before? Like,
I
did you,
have.
how did,
Yeah, yeah,
okay, so
yeah,
you've
yeah,
done,
yeah. So
not that
I,
it at scale, we're not talking about servicing empty lots or dealing with environmental concerns
right.
but you've done some level of
Yeah, well,
contracting
so
before.
I've owned commercial properties here in Moscow
Okay.
that I've coordinated the remodeling of. I actually, as a young man who didn't have any money when I was first married, I'm like, I want to remodel my kitchen, and I can't afford to have somebody else do it, so I'm going to do it. So I would work 8 hours at my job, and then I would go home for 6 hours
And
and
yeah.
remodel my kitchen all the way down to the studs, the electrical, the plumbing, the cabinets, everything. Took me about 6 weeks. And
Mm.
I think I lost 15 pounds because it was like so much exercise. Like
So,
it was a
hold on for a
grinder.
second. Let
But
me write that down. Your method for losing
yeah,
15 pounds
exactly.
was what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
work 8 hours and then work another 6 hours.
Right.
And when you see your wife washing the dishes in the bathtub and you're in your bathroom, you're like,
You're
okay, so clearly
motivated.
I got to get this thing done.
Yeah. You're
So
motivated.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're motivated. So yeah, so there's a weight loss program for you. So I've had some interaction with construction, but clearly
But not
nothing
at
at this scale.
scale, not
Nothing
at
at
the
this
scale.
scale.
I want to go back to your values. You sound very values driven. I think
Yeah.
that's fair to say. And we'll learn more
Yeah.
about you toward as the show goes on. But you had this 50 jobs for 50 people making over 50K each. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you went forward with what I think are very noble intentions. Were you surprised at some people who came back and said, why are you doing this? I can't believe, we don't need this in Moscow. Did you encounter any people with opposite values that challenged you?
Um, on the 50 at 50, yeah, I just had business people say, you're crazy. You need to have a business goal about, total addressable market and product
Mm,
market fit and all of what the MBA, books tell you to do. And I'm like, well, I think that if so many people say, I believe people are my most important asset. Okay, if that's true, it should drive your behavior. And I think a lot of
mm,
people just use it as a platitude to say people are my most important asset. And this is construction, this technology. But if you are really thinking about and caring about your people, they're going to know that whether they can articulate it, whether you can articulate it. When you deeply have an understanding of that people are driving the value for my business,
mhm.
then those people know it and they're going to work harder, they're going to work different, right? And so I've had a lot of success in the tech world because I'm like I care about blessing my employees. And if I really make them better people for their
Mm.
time here, and sometimes that means firing them because they need that kick in the pants to be a better person.
To go
But if
somewhere
my
else and
yeah, but if my goal is to make them better people throughout the process, then they're going to work harder. They're going to think of better innovations. et cetera. So, and that's held true in some of the work we're doing on this land development. But yeah, no, that's always been a driving principle. And at the end of the day, no matter how much money you make, you're gonna feel like I did good for other people. And 100 years from now, when I'm dead, the money's going to be gone, but the lives that you impact by, again, sometimes you push people, sometimes you fire people, sometimes you're just developing people. The investment you make in people, that's a lasting investment that goes for generations. And so anyway, that is kind of one of my drivers.
That's good.
And I've been very successful financially while having the goal of not just making money, but building people. So
Perfect. Now, I cut you off in the middle of a question that everybody's waiting for the answer on. How did you get around this retaining wall?
this retaining wall, it was a killer. And the nice thing, so I will say that I am pretty dumb, but I'm not as dumb as you might think. I did hire someone who had done land development before as my general manager, and we have, we meet twice a week and go through all this stuff. And I'll give a big shout out to Rich Beebe, has been extraordinary, and I would be dead in a ditch somewhere if it weren't for Rich and his work, because he's done it before. And so Rich and I sat down, and it's 10 o'clock at night and we're looking at the retaining wall. We're like, well, I wonder if we could get a grading permit from these 3 different owners, and we could just grade out and get a 3-to-1 or even a 2-to-1, and get some seed on that thing, and then we don't have to do the retaining wall. So
I was wondering if a grade would be the answer, or maybe
Yeah.
putting a park at grade, or
or something, right? And so we, with negotiation, one of them was like, well, as long as you can terrace it, then I can put a playground there. I'm like, cool, that'll be great. And so doing the dirt work costs 15,000 rather than 300,000, right? And it's those kind of creative things that I'm sure that if I had done this before, it would be just like, duh, go get a grading permit, right? But that has been the big stretch for me, is like, okay, I've got to solve this. So I'm glad that I had someone coming alongside, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. I've got to solve the problem. And that it's been a blessing to stretch me a lot, but I've definitely stretched a lot and learned a ton through the process. And I'm sure people who have done it before, all these things are boring. At the same time, I heard a testimonial one time from a person who had just, they had these cochlear implants. They'd been deaf their whole life, and they just learned to hear. And sometimes the reaction from someone who's not been there before, as an outsider, is fascinating. She was saying, like, the word purple was just like blew her mind.
Really?
Right? Which
I
is
got
just
goosebumps.
because
I don't know why, but that
I don't know
sounds
why, but
incredible.
like, just as someone who'd never heard before, we take these things for granted. So as a land developer, I'm sure a lot of land developers are like, duh, Andrew, that's not exciting. But actually, I learned a lot that I found really fascinating about how do you pick good contractors? How do you manage people well? How do you be successful and develop people while, again, not losing your shirt? So
Yeah. So I heard some other things, and we're not even into the topic yet.
I know, right?
Did you
Sorry.
notice that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure other people have as well. But I wanted to make a couple of quick observations before we get into the meat and potatoes. One of the things that you say a lot is, how can I?
Yeah.
So you don't, and I believe that I'm like this as well. I don't accept bottlenecks. For me, they are, I'm going to go over them, through them, around them, under them, or we're going to redefine them. And my question is always, how can I take this negative and turn it into a positive, or how can I mitigate it or reduce its impact? That's one of the things. And then the other thing I heard, which is totally unrelated to the first thing, or perhaps a little bit related, is the fact that you hire good people, you trust them, and then you have recurring meetings with them. This gentleman, that didn't write his name down, but you meet him twice a week on a recurring meeting basis. And it's, I'm sure it's a preset meeting to talk about an agenda that you guys generally know, and you're
100%.
there to solve problems.
Yep.
And too many people say, well, meetings are a waste of time. We're trying to build something here. I don't have time to meet.
Yeah, we meetings can be a waste of time. And as a CEO, I could have my calendar filled up with useless meetings very, very easily and quickly. But honestly, I do kind of an annual meeting audit where I look at all of my recurring standing meetings and like, okay, is this really necessary? Do I need to have it be as often as it is? Does it need to be as long as it is? So you absolutely should audit your meetings and make sure you're not just doing them because you're doing them. But a well-structured meeting with an agenda where you are keeping the ball moving down the field
Yeah.
is critical to the success of a project. I believe at any scale, but
Mhm.
also at this scale, right? When I was building a home, so I did. My wife and I have a construction problem, so I talked about, I remodeled a home, but as we were more successful, we bought 60 acres on the edge of town and designed and built a home and worked directly with a contractor. And that's where I learned that it is very easy for schedules to slip when you don't have a constant communication, because you'll
Right.
hit a roadblock, and it'll be like, okay, so how are we going to solve this? Or I found out that hunting season was such a big deal, and they'd be like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. And then 3 weeks later, they'd show up and like, where'd you go? They're like, well, hunting season, of course. I'm like, right,
Yeah.
but you
Did
said I'll see you tomorrow. And they're like,
oh
oh yeah, but it was hunting season. I'm like, that's wonderful, but it would have been
sorry.
nice to know that.
Listen, I
Uh,
turned down speaking gigs because it's hunting season,
I know.
but I would still communicate that with you because I'd be
Right,
all
that's right.
excited. I'm
That's
going
right.
hunting.
And that's where that communication, look, meetings can be super duper useful if done well.
Yeah.
And I point to those for the success that I've had in business and in land development and housing development, et cetera, because it is so, and there's a couple other things there. You're always working with people, right? And when you don't talk to someone for a while, it's easy to start thinking that they're
Oh,
ripping you off, or
a vacuum
they're
exists.
not being honest with you, and you start to, think less than charitable thoughts about people that you don't talk to very often. But when you have an opportunity to hear their perspective, there's generally a reason that things aren't getting done. But now you have an opportunity to problem solve that with the person, and not just think, man, that person's a lazy person that doesn't get anything
Yeah.
done. Right.
I
So
have to
that's why it's
thank you
important.
as we segue back to where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. Right.
But you're keeping this at the business of the construction business. We haven't talked about hammer, nails, wood,
Right.
roofing, nothing. We have, we talked a little bit about grading,
Yeah. Right.
right? But I should hitch you to the wagon that you're, here to
Yeah.
pull,
Why are
which
we here
is,
anyway? That's
yeah,
kind of
why
where,
are we
right?
here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You asked me that. Yeah.
no. This is I do want people to have the context that you're not just coming on here as a theorist.
Right.
This show hates theory because I hate theory. I like
Yeah. Yeah. For
reality.
sure.
So let's get back to this one here. How subtrades can stand out to a serious builder. So
Yeah.
perhaps let's start with a context. You had
Yep.
how many acres and how many homes have been built on this? And then let's get into your background as a builder and how you like to react with serious subtrades.
Yeah. So obviously this was raw land development. So I had to put in a bridge. I didn't realize how hard it was to put in a bridge, and I kind of owned a bridge for a bit. I mean, I'm,
That's
deeding it
awesome.
over to the city.
Yeah.
We had to put in a lift station because things, sewers only go downhill.
Mm.
And so we were in a spot where it had to be pumped uphill. Lift stations are an absolute pain in the neck. And you have 5 different contractors that have to be coordinated, and everyone's happy to point the finger at someone else if you don't have that
Mm.
regular standing meeting where, like, okay, what are you going to get done this week? How will this affect you? How will this affect you? Okay, if you're delayed by the electrical box not showing up for 2 weeks, what are we going to do about it? Let's solve the problem. Let's not all point at people. And I think that, this is back to those meetings. If you make it personal, and it's so easy to make it personal, then you're going to have a horrible relationship with your contractors. And when I have worked with contractors who are problem solvers,
Mm.
who, like, their business is all about business, whether it's a construction business or technology business, it's all about identifying problems and solving problems. If
Yeah.
you don't have any problems, you're lying to yourself, or you're actually not in business. And so it's your response to the problems that are actually how you're going to handle things. And so, like, when I can get a group of people together, and when I see, tempers flaring and fingers pointing, like, okay, this is unconstructive. This is not going to solve any problems. We need to solve this problem, and calling names is not going to solve it. And there's been plenty of that, in this world that I've learned in construction. But when we actually focus on solving the problem, it's amazing. So anyway, so I'm developing raw land, putting in
Right.
roads, putting in sewer, water, fiber, all of the
Everything.
franchise
You're
utilities.
building a community. You're a
I'm
community
building a
builder.
community. And one of the things that I wanted to do, and this is just something that was important to me, is I wanted to build a community that had an alley system, because I like alleys because it allows you
Mm.
to put things like trash and garages in the back. And then front doors can actually be the front door, right? Because you come to these, and sorry if you build these, but snout homes where it's like, here's the garage. And if you look really hard, you can find the front door somewhere. Well, that's not welcoming at all to a guest. If you're having people over for dinner and they've got to hunt for the front door, or they're not sure if it's actually just a side glass door. But no, I like front doors to be front doors. I think it's a way to project hospitality. It's a way to project that you're welcome. I also found through a lot of my research is when you have alley system, you have way more traffic. Local traffic goes in the alleys, which means you have less traffic on the road, and it's a lot easier to build communities, right? We all grew up where we could be riding bikes on our street with all the neighbor kids, and it was super fun. Well, that doesn't happen as much anymore. And I'd like to get back to that. I think that's a very developmental thing. It's way better than, everybody in their own home playing video games. And so
the
that's what I want
basketball
to,
net or the hockey net out on the front,
exactly,
and
exactly.
kids playing. And
how do we build community? Well, part of what we do, you have to build structural things to build community. And so that's why we're doing the alley system. So anyway, so I worked with the engineers, ended up finding a great engineer, worked with two of them, got bids on that, got bids on the dirt work. And that was also an eye-opening prospect because, we had a guy who came in really low, but you start doing digging and like, okay, well, you don't have signs and stripes in here. You don't have topsoil in the, in I call them the wheat strips, but the green strips between the sidewalks and the road. Like there was just a lot of things that he was trying to win the project, and then would come in later and say, well, it looks like we didn't have signs and stripes, and that has to be in here. That'll be an extra $110,000.
Change
Right.
order.
And so,
You wanted to change order you to. So this goes back to SubTrade standing out. You're a serious builder.
For sure.
You want a subtrade who's honest with you and not change ordering you to death. I've got theories on change orders because sometimes unorganized builders or GCs need to be change ordered. And we can take that into account. But most of us, it's extra paperwork, and it really is a hassle, and it messes with our production schedule.
Yep.
If you agree with me, that's how I see the world too.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Just tell me the honest truth. I'm going to win it or I'm not, but I don't want to change order you to death.
For sure. And it just, it puts everybody in a lack of, we talked about trust earlier. If you start without trust, like, oh, you're trying to either pull a fast one or just flat out be lazy, right? You didn't think through the whole project. You just whipped this proposal together for $8 million and just said, hey, here's the things that I think. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got, luckily Rich Beebe, my general manager on the project. He's like, so what's the plan with signs and stripes? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll address that later. Like, oh, will we? Like, you want to win this project. And so when you start with a lack of trust, it's never going to get better, right? They're trying to win the project, and they're already being a little bit dishonest. And so we didn't pick the lowest contractor. We picked the one we trusted the most. Right. Which is funny? Interesting. Right.
It is because people think it's all comes down to price, but the most expensive building is the one that never gets built or the one that takes forever to build.
That's right.
And we need to trust. So much of this, people want to overcomplicate the marketing. They listen to my show because they want to get more business. They want to be more profitable.
Yeah.
You have to build relationships with people, whether it's residential or commercial. It doesn't matter. You have to have real relationships, like you said, so that we can have tough discussions and good discussions at the same time.
That's right. And so that would be, I guess, my first, as we were just in the beginning of this process, I realized it is so important to have people that I trust. And obviously when they had done great work for other people, then obviously I'm going to have great references from them. And so your past work matters. And also just being honest up front. It would be better to not win the job and have a good name for yourself than to win the job and have everyone talk about how you screwed them. Right. Does that make sense? Like that, and that is hard, right?
It's hard to say no when you need to keep your guys working.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But a name, your good name is more important than that job, because there will always be another job. And if you can just be honest in this moment, if you can be straightforward, and the other thing is the contractor we ended up picking, he actually brought a lot of value before he asked for any money. So he looked at the designs and didn't just bid the plans. He said, here's my bid. But you're missing these three things that are going to really cost you money. And the engineers didn't put them in there, and you can go check with your engineer. But he actually gave thought. He actually cared about me and my project being successful beyond just winning the job. Well, that obviously builds trust at a totally
Right.
different level, right? And trust is the currency of substrates, right? You need to trust them, and trust that they're going to do a good job. They're going to do what they say they're going to do. They're going to do it on the price they say they're going to do it, and they're going to do it when they say they're going to do it. And if you trust that they're going to do those things, you can charge me more money. I don't care. I mean, I do care at some level because there's,
Right.
I gotta,
But I
keep the
need the
lights on.
value. I want the
Right.
value from that
I want the
transaction.
value, and
Yeah.
the fact that they were giving value even before they were getting money. I think
Mm,
that is an important piece of this. Is whether you take a consultative approach with a customer, with the land developer like me. You need to be driving value all the way down, and when you do that, it makes those decisions a lot easier for a contractor or a land developer like myself to go with you.
yeah.
And so but that takes a mind shift from just, I'm going to win this job, I'm going to bid out these different pieces. So
To be somebody that they can trust. Yet, from the scarcity mindset, I don't want to share those three things that you missed in your contract, because you
that's
might
right.
go to everybody else and then try to level the agreement with everybody and say, well,
Right.
but at the same time, even if they do that, they're going to say, hey, Dom's the one who brought up those
That's
three
right.
things.
That's
Plus,
right.
he's pretty close on pricing. Plus, he works on a presets. He makes promises and he keeps them, whatever it
That's
is.
right. That's right.
And he's easy to talk to and he seems reasonable.
Yep.
And then I win the job or I don't. And as you probably know, sometimes the jobs you don't win are the most profitable ones because I didn't take it
that,
and
that
eat
that
my
is a
shirt.
really true statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's so we're going through the land development. That bidding process was really helpful. That's why I ended up signing an $8 million contract for kind of that land
Just 8
development
million.
piece, right? No big deal. It is because that it was trust. It was actually caring about the project.
Mm,
It was clearly being honest and not in a position where I'm like, man, he said one thing one time, and like I have a mind for numbers, and so if you say 51,000 one time and 60,000 the next time, I'm going to be like, okay, so what changed? I'm going to remember that. And so be accurate, right? Don't
mm,
blow smoke up the skirt of somebody who's trying to do land development or a major project. They're probably better at numbers than you are. I'm just going to throw it out there. Nothing personal. They're probably better at numbers. That's why they're doing a multi-million-dollar project. And you need to be accurate. Don't just kind of, well, I think it's going to be 51,000, and then all of a sudden it's 60,000. The second you do that, and they remember that variance in numbers,
doubt.
they're going to ask you, or they're going to have an erosion of trust. And
Mm.
anytime you have an erosion of trust, it's not worth the extra $9,000. If you say 51 and then you're like, okay, I know that I said 51 before, it's 60 now because I realized X, Y, and Z, then
Mm.
you're building trust. But if you just say, it's 60,000, hoping they forgot that you said 51,000 before, it's going to cause a significant erosion of trust. And that trust is going to cost you money, even if you win the job, right?
Yeah.
Because you're never going to have a trusting relationship with the person who's paying the bills. And so that would be my other encouragement, is just be accurate.
I want to on that point. I want to ask you something. It's brilliant that you pointed that out because sometimes we don't know
Right.
when we're bidding a job. That brick wall behind you, there might be an unknown.
That's
I
right.
don't know what it's built on. I don't even, from here. I can't even tell if it's real brick or
It is real brick. Yeah.
okay.
No, it's a
But you know what
structural
I mean.
brick
There's
building. Yeah.
the whole building's brick.
It's a 125-year-old building, and it's structural brick. So,
There you
which is a
go.
little bit terrifying, but it seems to be holding up. So,
Yeah. So, but sometimes I don't know. We don't
yeah.
know until we open the wall. But
Yep.
this is a more general question. How are you with the answer? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you and I are talking about a project, and
Yeah.
how are you with me having the confidence to say, you know what, Andrew, I don't know.
Right.
Does that immediately discount me, or where does that put me in your mind?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And the answer is it depends. If it's, I don't know because I've been lazy and I don't want to do the work of actually figuring it out. And
Mm,
I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I can sniff out a lazy person pretty quick. And you just didn't want to do the paperwork. So I don't know. I'm not gonna answer it. It's like, well,
it's on
that's
you.
you not doing your work. If you're like, okay, so we need to move that mountain and we don't know how much rock's in there. So here's how we're going to think about pricing to make sure you have full visibility into why it
Mm,
costs 300,000 instead of 200,000, right? That I am totally fine with. Or if I'm remodeling one of my old historic buildings, like, okay, yes, I am willing to pay time and material until the walls are all pulled off so that we can figure out what we're working with. I'm still at that point, I'm going to want you to give me a number. But I have no problem with I don't know because of, physics, right?
right.
Well, I can't see inside that mountain. We have some guesses. We did some test holes. We did some drilling. We think there's this much rock, but we don't know. That I'm
Sure.
totally fine with. It's the, hey, how much is it going to cost to put this pipe in? I don't know. When will you know? I'll just start putting the pipe in and I'll let you know. I'm like, no, no, no. That's just you being lazy. And contractors, I hate to beat you all up. You'd love to be out with your tool belt on, with the bags on, not doing paperwork, right? It's just a truism of anyone who likes to work
Not
with
the
their
people that
hands.
listen to this show,
Yeah, 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 right. Yeah,
Andrew,
no, no, except
this
for
is a
except for
different
your audience, of
population.
course. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where the laziness comes in. You're like, well, I'm a hard worker, right? But you need to be a hard worker on everything. And that means I'm going to actually do the hard work of figuring out what this is going to cost so that I don't have to bring the I don't know to someone who's paying the bills.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it depends. The I don't know, it just depends on why you're bringing the I don't know to
Yeah.
the conversation.
There's so many questions I want to ask you about this. And I wish I was in the mind of everybody listening, because everybody's a different subtrade.
For sure.
Everybody listening, and some people are builders themselves, but they're maybe not building communities. But I wonder, when you come to a difficult decision between choosing subtrades,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what does it really come down to when you and your team are making the call?
Yeah, what does it come down to? I mean, obviously the things, if you're twice the price of everyone else, then you're probably not going to get it unless you can actually justify the fact that you're going to be twice the price. Because sometimes twice the price is because you've actually thought through the project and everybody else is trying to win it and is going to kill me with change
We
orders
see we
later.
see that in
Right.
architectural millwork a lot, where
Oh, I'm
they're
sure.
like, yeah, this is the casework you asked for, but the glass, the steel, the
That's right.
electronics or the lighting, that's also in here, and the upholstery, I'm gonna GC that for you. So
Yeah.
that justifies it, as an example, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, I feel like a broken record here. It comes down to trust. So we're going to make a decision on someone based on trust, and that trust is: are they telling me the truth? Are
Mm.
they a person who knows how to work hard and get things done? Like, it really is. You need to know that every day when you show up to work and you work really hard and do what you say you're going to do, or when you say you're going to get something done by a certain time and it takes longer than you think it does, and so you're going to put in the extra hours to get it done because you said you're going to do that, even to your own hurt. You're building trust in the marketplace. And that's just how the world works. When you are a hardworking person, and you're willing to take responsibility, you have extreme ownership of what you said.
Oh,
If
I
I
love it.
say a thing, I'm going to do a thing, right?
Yep.
And I've had that with a number of contractors where they've come to me and been like, we forgot to put in a fuel surcharge and diesel's more expensive right now. Like, okay, yeah, I get that. I really do. Like, that's a real thing. At the same time, you didn't put that in the agreement. And there's been a number of things where I said, okay, I said I would do a thing, and then it's going to cost me $50,000 personally to do that thing. But I said I'm going to do it. I need to do it anyway. And so if you have that expectation for me, which you should, then I'm going to have this expectation for you. You cannot come to me in the 11th hour with a bunch of things because you didn't do your paperwork early enough. You didn't bring me change orders along the way. And all of a sudden you're
Mm.
like, hey, by the way, I forgot about all this other stuff and I'm short on money. So here are a bunch of bills. That's a non-starter for me, because that was just laziness earlier that you're expecting me to pay for now.
Yeah.
And so I think being a person who says, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, even if it hurts me personally, I'm going to do the right thing. It might cost you now, but in the long run, you're going to have so much more work because people just trust you.
Yeah. Well, because you're roofing another 200 homes when you open
That's
up the
right.
next piece of that property,
That's
roofing,
exactly right.
as an
That's
example.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So.
What's this might be an odd question, but what kind of signals do you send me when you're feeling a lack of trust? And the reason I ask is because subtrades out there to think about the communication they're having with the builders they're working with.
Yeah.
Are you getting these signals right now? Like an indication that, we might
Uh-oh.
not be, you know what I mean? We might not
Yeah.
be on the right side of this relationship. What kind of
Right.
signals do you send?
And again, I'll talk about, I do these regular meetings, and I would encourage people, you need to figure out the project and all the subs, like how often you need to meet with them. You don't need to meet with everybody twice a week or once a week, but you do need to have a regular communication cadence.
Yeah.
And the signal that I'm going to send if a sub is not doing well, I'll need to start putting everything in writing. So if at the end of this meeting, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to put in writing because we clearly had a disagreement on the last verbal communication we had. If you're if you're starting to have these stand-up meetings and all of a sudden you're getting a recap because there's been a number of
Yeah.
disagreements over what was said, there's an erosion of trust happening right now, and you need to figure out how to get to the bottom of that. And I would encourage people, nobody likes awkward conversations, right? Just, we're human beings. We don't like that stuff. But human problems, relational problems, never get better with time. They only get better with awkward conversations. And so if you're starting to get these signals from the person paying the bills, that all of a sudden they need to put everything in writing and in a form letter, and it looks like a lawyer wrote it. These are signals.
That might be the sign right there.
Yeah. You need to go out and have a beer or have lunch and be like, okay, so what have I done? Is there anything that I'm doing that's eroding trust? And what can I do to fix it? Because I want to make this right, and I want us to have a long-term relationship where we're working together in the future. I will tell you, you will stand up. You will be in the 0.111%. If you do that, if you just have a frank conversation, hey,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you trust me and I'm working hard. And if you don't, I want to know, right? That will differentiate you from so many people. And it's not hard. It feels awkward.
It's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
But once you've done it, honestly, it's not that bad. And I have seen so many jobs that I've either been a part of, I've been leading, or I've been kind of on the sidelines watching, where you have this significant erosion of trust between the general contractor and the homeowner, or between the HVAC guy and the general contractor. And they're in a position where they don't trust each other, and enormous inefficiencies are introduced. It costs more money. Everybody's miserable. And what they needed to do is go and grab some lunch or grab a beer, grab a coffee, and talk about it. And not just talk around it, talk about it. That will you will be shocked at how easy it is. Everyone's panicked coming into those conversations. And I have had lots and lots of those conversations. I think I have the gift of awkwardness or something like that. But when you have done it a couple of times, you'll find out it's not that bad. But it heals relationships to the point that you're going to have way more work from that person in the future, because you just leaned in and said, it seems like we're not on the same page. How do we get to the bottom of this? What have I done wrong? What can I do better? Honestly, it's not as hard as you think it is, and you will win way more jobs for the rest of your life by having that kind of mindset.
And by being that person.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Incredible. You know what? It's interesting that I think if you and I were to go back and listen to this episode, which I'm sure we're going to do.
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Make my wife listen to it.
In the car with the kids.
Yeah. That's right.
Is the fact that we're really talking a lot about communications, being a better communicator. And it sounds so easy, but most people don't get into the trades because they want to be a public speaker or a negotiator, or they don't necessarily want to go have a coffee with somebody they don't know. They just want to do their job and install the heating unit or the heat exchanger. But at the same time, we're running a business. A business exists to solve problems for other people. And we solve problems by having clear communication. So I hope everybody out there understands. We keep coming back to communication.
Yeah. And you're probably thinking, well, sure, you're Andrew, you're Crapuchettes, you're a tech CEO. Of course, you're talking to a huge podcaster in Dom. This huge, the biggest. Joe Rogan's got nothing.
Nothing on me. He won't even return my calls. He's so
I know,
scared.
seriously. What's the matter with that guy? Anyway, so, but you're probably thinking, well, I'm just not that guy. I can't do that communication. if you want to grow as an individual and as a person, you don't have to be a brilliant communicator that comes on podcasts. Um, you don't have to be super articulate. You just need to be willing to have a conversation that might be a little bit awkward. And it's so funny because I had one of these conversations with one of my subs, and they're like, honestly, I was terrified coming to this conversation. Like they finally admitted to me, I was
Right.
terrified. Like, oh, this is just going to be like this, sweaty palms and like,
Yeah.
okay,
You're a
so
developer. It's cojones to say that.
right, right. And they're like, and honestly, it was a great conversation, and I feel like we're on the same page, and I'm grateful, and I'd love to work for you again, right? That kind of thing, right? And it wasn't that hard of a conversation. And he's a guy that mostly, wears the bags and is out there working, but I'm like, okay, so here's what I'm seeing. We need to fix this and that and the other thing. And if we can
Mm.
do that, we can continue to work together. And if we can't, I'm going to have to find somebody else to work with me. And it felt super awkward. Everyone's tense, but it wasn't. So anyway, that's my encouragement. You think this isn't something that I can do, and you're wrong. It is something you can do. Just
Fantastic.
that.
I wonder, do you think we've hit the topic? How subtrades can stand out to serious builders? I think we have, but I wonder if I'm sure other people out there have lots of questions.
Yeah. I mean, again, we've trust, communication, all of these things are a big piece of it. But as I have continued this development, and we're going vertical with houses now, it's fascinating to me the difference between different types of contractors. The guy who owns an excavator and the guy who owns a hammer are very different.
Right.
And so my encouragement to substrates is like, look, you need to understand the developer is working with very different types of people. And so if they misunderstand you,
Mm.
it's not personal. It's not personal because they were just working with a guy who's trying to talk about blasting rock. And now they're switching gears and talking to a guy who's trying to frame houses. And
Yeah.
just
Or
the
doing
languages are
filigree
going to be
around light
different.
fixtures. It's a
Yeah,
different,
yeah, exactly.
right? It's all,
Totally different, right? And so just, cut some slack to us poor developers because we are switching gears dramatically constantly.
mm,
One minute we're talking about something that we need to be an expert on lift stations because if we're not, we're pretty sure we're going to get ripped off because we don't know what we're talking about. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, now let's talk about foundations. Now let's talk about roofing materials.
and
Now let's talk about,
I have
and
to
so,
laugh
yeah,
because the next phone call is the mayor calling
right.
because they forgot to put the right lights in to the intersection and
For
realized da da da.
for sure. And then
Yeah.
and then I'm negotiating with the city. And I'll tell you, this is back to communication. I have saved myself millions of dollars by having regular communication with people in the city. And just like, I'm gonna grab 30 minutes every couple of months to just check in and make sure we're on the same page or push on specific
Mm.
topics and just have these conversations. And it's so much easier to write a nasty email or to think nasty things about a person rather than just talking to them. So I feel like I've now beaten the communication drum completely to death. But anyway,
We're gonna do it again on the next episode, so feel
yeah,
free. You're just
there you
getting
go.
us
There you
warmed
go.
up. Go ahead.
Yeah, that drum's dead. So, but that would be my last thing is just like, yeah, cut us some slack. We are jumping from topic to topic to topic.
Yeah.
We don't often, I also happen to be a CEO of a technology company in addition to doing
At the
housing
same time.
development at the same time, in addition to owning commercial properties that are historic old buildings that I'm remodeling. And I have 5 kids and I'm on the board of my kids' school. And I'm on a bunch of national boards of companies. So like I got a couple irons in the fire right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of developers are like that, right? If they are a serious developer who's doing something at scale, they probably have a lot going on. And so don't communicate in such a way that you assume that they're totally up to speed on framing or they're totally up to speed on your dirt work.
Right.
You don't want to be insulting and be like, so an excavator uses an arm, right? That's gonna that's gonna go badly.
Well, that'll be
Um,
good.
but so don't be insulting, but at the same time, just don't assume that they know exactly what your world is, and make sure that you have checkpoints along the way in conversations of okay, does that make sense? Okay, does that make sense? And just give them permission to ask questions and push on that. And again, that's just going to build trust.
It's just communications. I mean,
Yep.
I wouldn't hang out with
Exactly.
my doctor friend or my plumber friend and assume I knew everything that they were talking about in
That's
their
right. That's right.
installs in business, or the fact that refrigerants have changed because of this. I don't know. Sure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
But in their
Exactly.
world, to your point, in their world, everybody should know that.
That's right.
But
That's
I
right.
didn't know that. I have
Because they
no
live and
idea.
breathe it all day long.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be an error to think that everyone else is thinking about your topic all the. And I've got IT guys that work for me. Same thing. Like they'll be like, well, of course, the VPN, and I'm like, not of course. Like I never think about the VPN. I don't care about the VPN, and so I have to remind them of that as well.
Yeah. So listen, this has been a brilliant interview. I really have enjoyed it because
Well,
you've brought
thank
us
you.
up to a very interesting level. And I appreciate the fact that you ended on, look, I'm not only am I a developer, but I'm doing other things as well. And a
Yeah.
lot of contractors, subtrades are their time management is at the point where they can't even imagine volunteering for their kids' school on
Right.
top of this. And yet you're
Right.
on the board of companies and doing other things. So I think you've got a lot of cred there. But if somebody for sure is going to have questions and they're going to want to backtrack you, they're going to,
Yeah.
it's not called stalking if it's for work. So, but people like Andrew, how do we find you in this big wide world if we want to find out more or follow you or whatever?
Yeah, that's my daughter asked me, she's like, okay, so I don't understand followers on social media. I'm like, okay, so if you have 3 followers on social media, that's bad. And if
Yeah,
you have 3 followers on the street, that's also bad. Um, so in a different way.
that's a
So
good definition. Yeah,
yeah. So the tech company I'm running right now is Red Balloon. It's redballoon.work, WORK, because I think work is a good thing. And so redballoon.work, and we're just a pro freedom talent connector. So
mm.
we have thousands of businesses and honestly millions of job seekers who just want to focus on freedom and meritocracy and working hard. And it's been really a blessing. It's only about a 2-year-old business.
Mm.
But it has been a really fun adventure to be part of the employment story for many, many thousands of people and thousands of businesses. So that's redballoon.work, and you can go check us out there and we can help people with hiring. That's what we focus on. How do we bring the right people that are going to build your culture, and they're going to do the communication stuff that we've been talking about, right? You want to hire the right people. Hiring the wrong people, we all know,
Oh,
is really hard on your business. It's hard on your customer relationships. A bad hire costs between $17,000 and $20,000 based on current research. So it is expensive to hire poorly, and we help companies hire well. So the redballoon.work, that's a great place for you to go, and that's what I'm running right now. And then if you want to follow me on social media, LinkedIn, I'm probably the most active on,
sure.
and you can just look me up, Andrew Crapuchettes. I'm also on Twitter, or X, as I guess it's called now, A Crapuchettes. I'll be honest, I'm probably a little more on the political and sometimes religious side. So just strap in, put on a seatbelt if you're gonna follow me there. But yeah, I would love I'd love to have further conversations. You can track me down. Love to answer questions. And if you want to come visit beautiful Moscow, Idaho, and see my housing development that I'm calling Eddington, which I just
I
think
was
is
going to ask, did you call it Andrewland or like
no, no, we
I
called it
just was,
Eddington. And I'm a bit of a history buff, and Eddington's a battle where a great king in England saved the country from the barbarian hordes coming over from. Sorry if you're part of the barbarian hordes, but saved the England, and it was just a cool battle.
yeah,
And I just felt like I like to remember things in history because that's how we're going to have a better future. So there you go.
I love it. Well, thank you. I have one follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
Redballoon.work, what kind of jobs are posted there? Are they trade jobs? Are they
Yeah.
executive jobs? Or like, what's the scope?
Yeah, they're all over the map. I will say there's a lot more. We have a lot of tech jobs.
Mm.
We also do recruiting services. So, like, we just had a large contractor in the Denver area. They needed a new foreman for their job. They didn't want to spend their time hiring. And so we will, for $4,500, we'll strap in and take over the hiring process for a specific position for businesses. And then, yeah, the jobs are all over the place. They're everything from retail to technology to contracting. So,
Sure.
but
But it's more about the values of the people that are in the
that's right.
community.
The
Okay.
unifying feature is everyone's kind of like what made America great in the first place. How do we get back to that?
Yeah.
Hard work, meritocracy, free speech, all of those things. So that's what Red Balloon really focuses on.
So the domain name nosnowflake.com was taken.
Yeah, it's
Sorry, I'll
funny.
leave it. I'll leave it at
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
Thank you. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time.
yeah, absolutely.
I think it's going to start a lot of, we just keep coming down to communication and trust and communication. And it's
Yep.
so simple.
Yep. For
We could
sure.
have done the episode in 7 seconds if we
Yeah,
just
we
said that
could.
again
Yeah,
and
we
again.
could have just said that. Okay. Any questions? Yeah. Sometimes they need to be unpacked a little bit, but
Right.
but
Right.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust and communication. You're going to do fine.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Have a great
All
day.
right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Well, my friends, what did you learn from Andrew about getting in the mind of a developer? I mean, you heard how he had to solve that grading problem. It's a problem. We all run into problems in business, but you have to find creative ways to do that. You have to meet with your team on a regular basis. You have to set up that pattern of repetitive communication with your team so that both of you know that meeting is coming. Both of you know you can hold your questions till then. Both of you know you're going to be solving issues then. It's part of professionalizing the business. So on today's episode with Andrew, I learned about communication again and again and again. I wonder what you took away from today. Anyways, go find a way to put that in place in your company as you grow it, right? I want you to get yourself from a place where you're doing 1 or 2 million right now to where you think about what it looks like to look 4, 5, or 10 million a year. Hey, right now we're going to simplify and solve a common problem in a minute. I think you're going to appreciate it, especially when we talk about professionalizing the business. But first, I want to remind you that we've got a Facebook group called Contractor Strategy Group. And we've had a lot of people join lately. So I want to say hi to a couple of people. Stephen G, Aquila E, Travis B, Ben H, Charles H, Kevin H, Joe C, a gentleman named VKK. I think it's a gentleman. John W, he's from San Diego. Got a couple of Johns. This is Jon W. Adam D, Eddie McD. How do I shorten that last name? Maybe I'll just say it. Eddie, I hope you don't mind. He's in the heating and air conditioning business. Eddie McDonald, Ted C, Mike M, Ramon F. Hey, Ramon, where's Eddie? Ramon and Eddie are in here. This is fantastic. Angeles, Kevin, Heather, Cesar, Clemente, JV, James, Ron, Victor G, Nicholas R, Steve O, Chris Ciati. He's in there twice as his custom home building company and himself. And Jason D. Enrique, guys, I don't want to keep going, but I also don't want to offend anybody. If I didn't read your name, welcome to the Contractor Strategy Group on Facebook. What we're talking about right now in there actually is kind of interesting. I met one of my clients for lunch, and I took a picture of his shoes because the shoes are a simple system, and that simple system was to keep him off the tools. I tried a golf shirt. I tried to get him to wear golf shirts to keep him off the tools, but that wasn't working. But the shoes, now that was the simple system to keep him off the tools. Anyhow, listen, I want to tell you, we want to simplify and solve a common problem. And the common problem is having systems in your business, professionalizing the business. And where do you start with that, right? So now this might not sound like the most exciting thing you've ever heard from me, but do you need a company policy and procedure manual? Now, you might need one because your insurance broker requires it. You might need one because you're about to change the way the business operates to get ready to be sold. If you're on the path for succession planning, or if you're on the path to get it on the market, you're going to need a policy and procedure manual that goes in your data vault. You share that with the new potential purchasers, etc. Any company that's going to be sold for evaluation more than just tools and equipment, you'd need a policy and procedure manual. So we have the policy and procedure manual outline here for you. Actually, it's not only an outline, there's a couple of starters in there. So just send me a text message that says policy and procedure manual. And then, with some snoring emoji after that. I'm joking. You need this. You need it, but it's as exciting as it sounds. So the policy and procedure manual, and then you guys know my cell number. It's 315-903-7853. Now, I know I'm joking. I said that you snore, but these are the kinds of systems that a serious $1 or $2 million business needs to put in place, because you have to start acting, walking, talking, and looking like a $10 million business, or you will simply never get there. You'll simply never get there. If you are already a $10 million business and you don't have a policy and procedure manual, and you're wondering why you're stuck, if you're wondering why people don't know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, Fred tries to help and Barney gets in the way, all of that stuff, then it's time to put the policy and procedure manual in place. And this is the template for it. So listen, all of this is unlocked as a document. I'm looking down on the screen here. If you're watching me on YouTube, you know what I'll do is I'll pull it up right here. There. Now I'm looking at the camera. There's a couple of images there, or places where you can put your image of your logo, picture of your van, your crew, etc. Then we've got a section there for what's the employee name and the employee number. So how many of you are thinking, oh, my employees don't have a number? Well, how do you track them? How do you know who has and hasn't received a copy of the policy and procedure manual? How do you know who's been onboarded into the company, etc.? As I go through the overview, you're going to realize why any serious buyer that wants to come and buy your contracting business in the future is going to require this in order to give you above fair market value. If you don't have something like this, you can still sell the business, but I can tell you how much you'll get when you sell the company. You'll get below fair market value, if that math makes sense. What you're going to get in this download is the header and subsection version. Okay, because I can't fill in what your policy is on being late or on quality, etc. So you're going to get the header and the subsections, and they're all laid out very nicely. And then all you have to do is go in and fill it according to how your company runs, what your vision is for the company. This thing is perfect if you want a low cost, do it yourself version to work on in-house. Now, there's people out there that sell policy and procedure manual kits. It's too much gun for the bear. I don't think you need to shut down your company for 6 months while you work with a consultant who writes this book for you. Because ultimately, this book is just going to go in your data vault. You're going to refer to it from time to time. You're going to use it for training, but you don't need to basically stop all operations just to write a binder or to have a set of e-documents, right? I can help you with this, of course, but you can do it yourself. So you might be surprised that the very first thing in the policy and procedure manual is what are the awards and recognitions that our company has won or is recognized for. That's nice because it tells people who are starting to look at this, hey, this company's recognized, they stand for quality, or they stand for community service, or maybe they're a faith-based organization. Whatever it is, you want to have that up front so people go, oh, okay, now I know the filter I'm looking through. Then we get into the table of contents. And so obviously I'm not going to read the whole policy and procedure manual because you'll just hang up. But here's the headings: company goals and policies. So this is where you have your company profile, organization chart, the very interesting subheading, the right to change policy, which we as owners need, the right to change the policy and procedure manual, right? Then we've got employment policies. It's got all sorts of interesting things. This is where you put the self-assessment for the I want to raise SOP that you may have heard from me before, right? So you've got everything that you need to have in here, right? The equal opportunity policy, the recruitment and selection policies, anniversary date, attendance, performance appraisal, performance correction, how we dress and appearance, which of course relates to PPE or safety on site. I won't go through all of them, right? What to do in the case of layoffs. All of those things are laid out here. Then we've got an employee benefits section. And again, all of this is customizable. It's a Word document. So you just delete what you don't like or add in where you do. If you don't have benefits or you're trying to work towards benefits, then you can change this section to what you need. There's a section on compensation. There's miscellaneous policies like drug and alcohol abuse, smoking, telephone, internet, cell phone, pagers, etc. Pagers. Who still uses pagers? Employee parking, personal work on premises, what some people call government work. Are people doing personal work on premises? What's your policy around that? If I don't have a policy and I haven't told them the policy, I can't enforce a made up policy. So here it is, right? What about the use of company owned vehicles? What about drinking or using drugs while you're driving a company-owned vehicle? Where do you formally have that written down? This is where insurance wants to look and see that you've got documented procedures and that you're talking to your team about it, typically at the health and safety meeting. Speaking of safety, Section 6 is safety. Section 7 is security. Security of the premises, security of the people, security of conflict of interest. That's specifically where we say, look, in the event that you do leave our company, you can't go and take our clients. It says it right there. And then expectations for employee privacy, et cetera. So there's all the headings. It's as easy as that. Once you've got the skeleton, you know how to fill in the pieces in between. Anyways, I hope you appreciate that I shared this. It's called the Company Policy and Procedure Manual. Only people who are on a growth path even care about something like this. Like I say, if you're at 1 or 2 million and you're wondering what it looks like to be at 5 or 10, or if you're at 10 and you're wondering what it takes to get to 20 and 30, these are the kinds of systems, that professionalization that you need. Anyways, shoot me a text to say policy and procedure manual. And you guys know the cell phone. It's 315-903-7853. Thank you for checking in. I appreciate it. I hope you got a lot from Andrew today. It was a great interview. I like that entrepreneurial mindset he's got. And the fact that he shared, look, when you're talking to him as a builder, he's got a million other things going on, including, just like the rest of us, he's on the parental committee at his kid's school. So a lot of things going through his brain. So keep that in mind when you're talking to developers and builders like him. Listen, you guys know, I've said this before, this podcast is fantastic. I love it because I get to reach out to everybody. What I don't like is I'm not across the table having a coffee or a glass of wine with you. And one day I look forward to that happening. Until then, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks. Bye-bye.